now.
Good, you're live.
Okay,
Not
start
live,
this meeting
recording.
late. Roll call, Mike Ward. Here. Lee Butler.
Here.
Jen Pendleton.
Here.
Holly Harlow.
Here.
And I'm Matt Benner. Move right to pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Any agenda adjustments?
Nope.
Public comment? All good?
We're good, thanks. Welcome back, Mike.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Here, here. Presentation, student data sharing.
That is D.
And it's coming.
Going here. Should have a bigger screen.
Four 4491. Yep.
All right, so I just wanted to take some time at this meeting to kind of talk a little bit about some numbers at the school that are kind of coming in. I wanted to touch, it's pretty short, but there's some important numbers to talk about. So there's some academic numbers that I put into this presentation and some behavioral numbers. And I just think it's a good to kind of reference some of these, especially as we get into budget season. It's just because some of the things that come up, we want to make sure we're addressing them. And I kind of get asked a lot by people like, what's going on in schools and what's it like in schools? And so sometimes just like looking at the numbers can be helpful so that you get an understanding of that and just like what we're so I'll get right into it. So academics and behavior. So last spring, we completed our main career assessment tests, and our overall achievement for students in the building in math and reading are those numbers you see there, 69% for math and 70% scored at or above the state standard. So I've been trying to like dig in, trying to find some like comparison data like between us and like other schools, but I don't have access to like that. So that is one thing I'd love to like bring back to like this group. And so
It's on our next A-team agenda, data comparison.
yeah, so I'd like to just, I think the numbers like look pretty good, but I think it's good to kind of see how it stacks up amongst other schools in the area, and how it stacks up against other schools in the state. And those numbers are pretty, based on the last few years, they're similar numbers that we're seeing. So
You'll probably share this with you if you want the presentation.
Carries through for years. And so the main three-year assessment, just to kind of give people some background on that. So we always used to, not always, but for a long time, schools have been using the NUIA. We use the NUIA to kind of measure growth. I mean, kids get like a RIT score, and so it tells how students are doing as a percentile based on nationally. So now when students take the NUIA test, it's actually kind of two scores in one. One is like it tells them how they're doing at their grade level based on state standards. And so the kid is either well below, at, or exceeds at their grade level, but then also gives like a national score, like how they're doing across students of their age across the country. So it gives a lot of data within like one test. So the other part of it is is the growth, and so you're always looking at like, did the kids grow from one year to the next, from fall to spring or whatever. So Mill grows in the 51st percentile for growth. So our students kind of perform and have an average amount of growth. Let's say that's like right there in the middle as far as that's national, like comparing ourselves to schools all across the country. So those are pretty good numbers. And I've kind of been saying to staff this year, it's like we're doing the best we can, but we can do better. That's kind of like the mantra. You can always, like, everyone's working as hard as I can, but it doesn't mean we can't reflect on our practices and like the goal is we want to see more growth, we want to do better. So that's, that's the focus of our conversations as a staff. The other piece that's a big part of the budget, and I think it needs to get spoken about, is the amount of needs that we have in the building. How do we suppose, how are we addressing our academics? I mean, what's impacting our scores and what's impacting like students' experience here? So this is important to know. We have 142 students in the building, and this is 504s and special education. We have 13 students with 504s. We have 26 students that are receiving special education services. We have 15 students with MTSS plans, and MTSS is like when if a student starts to, if there's some struggles in the classroom, teachers try to help them within the class, and then after a certain amount of time, we bring them to an MTSS team for a referral, kind of like, hey, what else can we do for this student to help them out, whether it's academically or behaviorally or social emotionally. So we have 15 students with those plans. So altogether, if you add all those kids up, that's 54% of the school. That's 54% of the school is like, we have a group of people that's working to like support them academically, behaviorally, social emotionally. So that's a significant number. And those services obviously take time and resources and people. I think that's just important to kind of have that big picture view. I think you'll hear during budget season, you hear this a lot, like, geez, special ed, is the costs are increasing across the board. Well, part of it is it's increasing because of the level of needs that we're seeing. Like, we're a school that wants to help every kid, and like this is, we want to give them the support they need. This is what we're experiencing. I think this is going to get talked about a little bit later in the meeting, but there's some shifting costs that you might see on budget coming up. So with our Compass and Pathways programs dissolving, so we have to shift money away from special education tuition line to the staffing line to meet the needs of you and returning some new students. We'll see some other associated costs with that as well, related to transportation and some upgrades to potential upgrades to acquire room. And again, these are services that we have to provide for students to keep where they're at. So last year we created our SSE behavior program. The SSE had existed in the past in various measures, but over the past couple of years, we've seen an increase in the need for that room. So it's turned into a full-on behavior program, so to speak. So that to kind of show people why that was a good decision by the board to support the creation of this program. So just this year alone, we've had 1,772 visits to that room, which is right here, right next to us. So that SSE is right over there. And so that's 35 visits a day. So that kid comes in. It might be one kid coming in multiple times, but that's like that's how much it's kids are coming in and out of that room. So kids are in there for rewards because they have a behavior plan and they're like doing a great job, so they get to like do something fun. They're coming in because they need to take a break. Sometimes the teacher tells them to take a break. Sometimes they request to take a break, depending on the plan. Sometimes they need a practice person. Like teachers say, hey, can you help this kid learn this, or help this kid practice this? Sometimes they're going in there to complete some work, whatever. And then, so as you can see, their numbers are pretty stable for as far as last year goes to this year, 35, 36 kids a day. So, before, like my first year when I came here, we didn't have a case manager over there. We had like one ed tech that was in that room, and it was just a lot to manage. Just the amount of need, the amount of like kids that were having to access that space, it was just too much just for, in the past that would have been office, like those kids would be going to the office doing that. So having that room was a huge part of how the school's functioning, especially at the K-2 room. A part of that room is that's where the quiet room is located, and as you can see, we've had 30 seclusions and restraints this year compared to last year, which was 8. So part of that is because of getting some with pathways and Compass not happening anymore. Kids coming to us are in need of seclusions and restraints more than they have in the past. we're doing everything we can to, our goal is to limit those, like that's the ultimate goal. We don't ever want to put a kid in seclusion or to have to restrain a student. But there are times when things are unsafe. If the kid's not being safe behaviorally, if they're not being safe themselves or others, then we have to make that call. And so those, that number is increasing because of some of those shifts in the district. And as you can see, we've had 79 instances of hitting, kicking, or biting against staff. So just people ask me like, what's it like working in school? Well, I can tell you 25 years ago, there weren't 79 incidents of hitting, biting, or kicking against staff 2 months or 3 months of the year. That's just what we're seeing. When kids are incredibly dysregulated and a lot of times they're just not ready for school, and like a lot of times there's having to manage a lot of things. So part of the job is we have to have people that are working in these rooms and like that are working with students and trying to keep them safe. And the goal of all these things to kind of decrease these incidents and to keep kids safe and keep them learning. But I think it's just important for the board to like understand like kind of the use of that room and like how it's being used. But also keeping in mind like we're still a school we have pretty good math and reading scores. So we're balancing these two incredibly huge weights, and it takes just a lot of conversation and a lot of collaboration you got to keep both balls in the air and at the same time, and in order if you want to keep things working. There's some good news. There's not good news here. So chronic absenteeism, like 2 years ago, 24% of our students were chronically absent. That means they're missing more than 10% of school days for any reason. Last year, they went down a little bit to 22%. This year, we're at 12%. That is a number that the state tracks. If we hit like a certain level, then we're on notice basically. If we have a certain certain level of absenteeism, but at this point, that number is it's looking pretty good at this point. So I'm pleased to see that number has gone down. And I think that's this is, and just so people are aware, it's not just kids that are truant. This is just kids that are out of school because they're sick, families on vacations, whatever. Any absences count toward chronic absenteeism, and that's what gets reported to the state. So we always try to do the best we can to kind of communicate to families like, being in school is incredibly important. Like try to, as much as possible, make sure your kids are attending. And then we have situations where kids are, there's been some situations at the middle level this year where parents get to a point where they absolutely just can't actually get their kid into the building and they're too big to pick up and bring in. And so we have to come up with plans for them and like try to work with the families and work with the kids to how can we get them in here. And I've told there's been kids that haven't come to school in a month, and I'm like, look, I don't care if they come here and just take a nap on the nurse's office. Like you need this. I want to see him every day, and I would count that as being present. Just come to school, please. And so have that conversation with people. Hopefully, I don't know if the percentage is going down. I know we've had more conversations on our MTSS team and about like really focusing in on students with attendance issues. I think we've made a real conscious effort to get those numbers down because being here is the best thing for them. That's like they have to be here, and if they're here, then we're taking care of them and we're working with them and teaching them how to teaching them academic skills, and we're teaching them how to overcome the stress of being in school. So that's the part of big part of what we're doing. So that's all I had for the numbers tonight, but I just thought it was a good important time to kind of share some of these figures and this data. And I am like more than welcome to present any data that the board wants me to know about. Like let me know, and like I will add this to any slide and come up with sharing those numbers with folks if they're interested. Any questions about that fall data?
With the incidence of biting, hitting, and kicking,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're allowed to share this, but do you know approximately how many students were involved in that? Like, was it, one or two students over and over again versus the 8 incidents last year, or?
It tends to be like a handful of kids that are responsible for the majority of like the incidents. That's certainly the case. Because schools are, we're charged with educating every single kid that comes to the door. Like it can, like, having just a couple kids or a few kids that have like intense experiences like that we have to be ready for. The most intense experiences, like what we plan for. It's what we're like we have to staff for. I think that's an important thing that people need to understand. Like, even if it's just a few kids that's responsible for like the majority of those instances, like we have to plan and staff for like that level of need. And when it doesn't happen every day, but we have to be prepared every day for it. So I think that's something that I'm really hoping like you all understand, and just school boards everywhere understand. That's part of what we need to make sure that we're doing is thinking about those extreme events. We want to be prepared and ready for those extreme events and for any kid that comes to us. Sometimes that makes budgets look big. That's just the reality of kind of like where we're at.
And also legally, like, it's supposed to be like where the student resides in the homeschool. So if the student resides in Nobleboro, then the student should be serviced in Nobleboro in the least restrictive environment.
And all, sorry.
Yes, I see. I know in the past it tended to be like the kids in the younger grades that accessed it the most. Are you still seeing that trend? Like, are students starting to outgrow it
Yeah.
still?
That's a good question, a really good question. Because there are kids that were accessing that when they're younger. As they get to the middle level, like once they get beyond like 4th grade, say, their behaviors start to take a different form and shape, and so their interventions have to be different. And so we have, for instance, or used to be the cow room, and so that room is like if kids can go there, work with staff individually. Kids can still take breaks. They might go to the resource room to take breaks. Our interventions shift as they're developmentally, their needs shift. The intensity tends to be highest at like the younger levels as they're kind of like learning how to be in school. And like, the hope is once you apply, we're going to apply these interventions, and like we're going to have them work with guides, have them work with social workers. We're going to have them like have behavior plans. We're going to work with the families on having resources from outside communities. And hope that we can provide as much support as we can when they're young, so that we don't need quiet room for kids that are in 7th grade, and that looks very. I used to work in a behavior program that was 5th through 8th, and it looks different than like a K2 quiet room, right? And it gets more intense when they're that age. We haven't had a situation here where we needed a quiet room for like that age student. That doesn't mean we won't, because I've been in schools where you have needed that, and that's something that I think this group needs to think about and talk about. Certainly. Could have situations where kids move in and like they just show up in Nobleboro and like they have really intense needs. And what do you do for that student who's a 7th grader who is incredibly dysregulated? So the current space that we have, because it's used by K2 so much, I think legally, right? You can't have a behavior program can't span 9 grades. It has to be like you have to have 2 separate
certain grade level ranges that can be together in a classroom.
So we have alternate spaces, and this is conversation about how we use our spaces and what we're doing with spaces here. You have to have spaces available for the different needs that we're experiencing. Every school in the entire coast of Maine, their population has dropped in the last like 25 years. Like the enrollment, if you look at every school I've worked in anyway, the enrollment was highest in like the 80s, 70s, like higher, and it's like steadily been dropping down. But the level of needs have been going up. So there's no like in every place, and because of the needs are going up, you have to have different spaces to meet kids' individual needs. Like you have, if a kid is in a classroom and is dysregulated and they need to take a break, you need to have a place for that kid to kind of take a break and like work themselves back into the classroom so that they're not taking away from the experience of the other kids in the class. And so even though there might be 50 kids less in this building than there were 20 years ago, we need the flexible spaces and like all the, those flexible use of rooms to deliver OT, to deliver speech, to like have those breakout flexible learning spaces so that learning can continue, and kids can maintain dignity so that they
To work that.
Exactly, yeah, that was the life thing about it. I mean, I always talk about previous experiences, but like when I was in Rockland, day trip program, I had 17 kids on my caseload in grades 5 through 8, and I had 2.5 ed techs, and they kept giving me rooms, but I didn't have like enough people to actually be in the rooms to like work with the kids. And so I would love many times I was like me and like 10 kids in the classroom trying to work together and stuff like that, which that was interesting. But you gotta have people, you gotta have space, you gotta have programming to meet kids' needs. So all those things, of course, the rubber hits the road, all those things cost money.
Can I ask a question, Adam?
Yeah.
You talked about compass and pathways resolving and the monetary shift to staffing here. And this may be getting a little bit off topic, but what are we doing? Are all those positions filled? Do we have all the ed techs we need and the programs we need? Knowing that those to replace those?
So yeah, I think when there's going to be probably some more detailed conversation about what the budget looks like when Peter talks about that. But basically, our budget had enough money that was put into it for the potential, for the eventuality of kids coming back to us. And so what we've had to do is, in particular, we've got 3 kids that need some basically one-on-one staff in order to like kind of keep them learning and keep them safe. So we've had to use that chunk of change for in the budget. We're gonna have to shift that around to get staff. So we've got staff. It's not we need 3 full-time people. We've got 2 and 0.4 or something like that. If someone is working the SSC, but she's just working 4 mornings a week. She's not full-time, but so full-ish like staff, I would say. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I have one more question. Sorry. Chronic absenteeism, you said the ones that are too big to be carried in that are staying home. Are we making any concessions to that as far as sending work home so that they're keeping up, or is the expectation that everyone comes here to complete work?
Well, it's been like every kid is different and every parent is kind of different. So we always work as a team to kind of come up with like, what's the plan to address this particular kid? And sometimes there are kids that are in special education, so that kind of is a different route. Sometimes not, and so I've used the school resource officer to deliver truancy letters. So like that's one route. Another route is like, one of the things I try to, I want to work with families. It's kind of like, tell me what's going on. Like, how can we help? Like, what are the barriers? Like, in helping them identify things that maybe they didn't know was like a primary cause. So we've had 2 instances this year where kids had like video game addiction. I mean, honestly, it was video game addiction, which is in the diagnostic statistical manuals and actual disability now. And so that was what is keeping kid from coming to school. Again, they get to a point where a parent can no longer like grab onto them and pull them in. They're bigger than their parents. So, so I've been involved with, we have to say solo. Scott Solorzano is our school resource officer. He and I worked a lot together this year, a little bit more than last year, and he's been a phenomenal resource for us. He, approaches it the same way we do. Like, how can we work with the families? And you get to the point where like, we're working together until they show us they're not working with us, and then at that point we can, take the legal action. We can make calls to DHHS because parents are being negligent or whatever. So it runs a whole spectrum of things like, hey, can we connect you with case management services like Mobius? Hey, do you need to have, is there a social worker that we can connect you with? That is there something that we can do here at school that your kid's gonna get excited about? Like, we can like bring people in here to get them like, hey, do you want to do that? Well, let's do that here. Let's try to be creative. Last year there was a kid that really wanted to do karate, so I reached out to someone who was a karate instructor, and I was like, hey, can you do karate here at school? So that fell through. But that also has a budgetary impact. Like, I need money in the budget to be flexible, to be able to I need to be able to hire someone to come work once a week, to teach a kid karate just to get them to school. You know what I mean? So some of it has to be there's the carrot. You try to use the carrot as much as you can, but then other times you have to take the leader, unfortunately.
I'm assuming we could be held accountable for, I know you said the state checks those numbers, but we have a kid who doesn't come. And like you said, if you're not following.
Ultimately, we put on a list of oh, this is something that's, we get a targeted need, this is one data point that shows us that you need help. And if it gets too bad and for too long, the state can come in and kind of tell you what you need to do. So, which is, you don't want to get to that point. Right. Which is good, which is why I'm glad our numbers are getting better, the absentee numbers. But the other numbers they look at is our special ed students, are their math and reading scores, how do they compare to other schools in the state? And there's lots of different numbers that the state kind of looks at when they kind of rating us in the school, those things, those track of those things. And whenever there's a kid that gets to the point where they're truant, Todd and I are communicating and coming up with, how do we approach this kid and what should we do? And so we get to that level, that's when, Todd and I start consulting.
And there is a difference between truancy and chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism, the 10% that he was talking about, even if a parent writes a note that excuses a student from school, they're still considered to be chronically absent. So even if you did create a package where you would send them work home and they were doing work at home, they still would be dinging the school as far as being chronically absent.
So that's why it's school. Just try to get it done if you can, and that's part of the work. It's working. Part of a lot of my work has been trying to work with families and come up with plans to get them to school. So, and also, part of that is having the right programs for kids. Kids will show up when they're getting what they need, and kids will show up when they know that they're safe.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Adam. Looking to get a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting on October 8th.
The Jen?
Second. Any discussion? No? All in favor? One abstained? I'm missing something. Am I missing something? I don't know. Todd?
What are you looking at?
I don't know. They're not in order.
Is this it, teacher shout out? November 13th.
Here we are. Okay. I think is that next? Teacher shout out, Sarah Plummer.
So it's good for this report.
Is that-
Over there, it's okay.
gonna pay for it?
Yours is,
Close report next.
Chair's report is you.
I don't have it in my packet.
Jacket's missing the entire agenda.
Oh, well, quick meeting.
I was hoping I hit that. I was like, whoa, this is fun.
So I'll go to the other one.
Yeah, look over my shoulder.
No, that's all right. So, Chair's report? Yep. Thought I had another copy somewhere here. The next regular meeting for the school board will be December 9th at 5:30. The last meeting of the AOS board was held on November 12th, but we had also had another prior meeting in October. We had two meetings on the AOS between now and our last meeting. So the last two meetings, the prior meeting, not the last one we just had, GSB had given us a copy of their withdrawal letter from the AOS. And that was more or less all the topic of that meeting. Kind of talked about if everybody was good. It was good of them to bring it to us because they didn't have to. And they changed the wording on a few things. The last meeting we just had, which was yesterday. They got approval from the state to withdraw, or from the commissioner to continue with the withdrawal process. And then we scanned over an AOS budget.
That other meeting was October 17th.
Yes, October
Is that
17th.
effective for next year?
It is 20.
July
yeah,
1st.
20 of 26. So they,
26?
well, 25, 26.
25, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a 26 budget. So yeah, they won't be part of this next budget. So that will change a bunch of numbers.
Right.
And we are having the gathering next week,
Tuesday.
Tuesday, to go over redefining the numbers and maybe changing the cost share formula a little bit.
Still based on student, right?
No, so long ago, we, at the AOS level, started talking about 25-75 split, because so many positions at the AOS doesn't go by student population. It takes the same amount to write up the paperwork for a school, whether they have 80 students or 300. So trying to figure out a better cost share formula to make it work feasible. Is that what you're trying to bring up?
Yeah, I bring up the,
I don't want to read that.
I do think it's worth drawing attention to one thing here right now. The cost sharing formula. I was reading this, and Todd, you read this.
In a local agreement, yep.
It needs to be, it says here in the interlocal agreement right here that member school units shall share the cost of the AOS central office budget on the basis of the respective number of pupils on October 1st of the preceding year. The AOS school committee, by a 2/3 vote of its full membership, may modify this cost sharing method. And that's all that it takes. Is it? We talked about this last night, but we said we'd clarify this.
Right.
But what I'm reading, and what I, so first one tends to point out, is it just says by 2/3 vote is full.
I was just going to say the same thing.
So I agree, but I'm also betting GSP abstains.
So they have to show up though, I think, to abstain. I think you want to know what's going on with this, that language, because
I'll get some clarification
I
on it.
have a heads up that some person's
Yep.
going to draw attention to that sentence.
Okay.
But it is still based on number of pupils.
Well,
At this, so,
this-
yeah, the current one is, right. So what it amounts to is, and I don't know, were we going over this at all tonight on the call? Were you bringing it up?
It's been brought up.
Okay,
I
so-
think that's critical that people understand it. I don't want anybody to say they get caught by surprise.
No, right. So what the big, ours goes up 80 something thousand, our cost, right? Is that right? 88,000, somewhere in there?
That sounds about right.
Is that close? Bristol's goes up about 100. Jefferson goes up 100-ish. South Bristol's goes up 50 grand. It was brought up last night that they were willing to do the ESC, 150 pay to play, and there was no question. That never bothered them, right? So each school was going to have to pay 150 to be a part of the ESC. So that was brought up last night, and that's why this was discussed, because by rights, all board can change the cost share without a town vote. Any other thing in the AOS has to be brought to town vote, each membering town. So yeah, so we're up.
93.6.
Yeah, 93.6 is what ours will go up. South Bristol's up 51,000. Everybody else is up a little over 100 at what is proposed budget at the moment.
Now, when it shifts and GSB's basically 40% of that revenue is no longer there, the size of South Bristol now is only at 10%, it exaggerates the hit that the other four towns are gonna take, right? So the fact that we've been saying for years that, South Bristol's getting too good a deal here, it becomes way too good a deal when you have a smaller group, is my opinion. Just being straight honest about what I see here in the numbers. And Matt's right. They did say when we had a proposal to be an ESC at 150, they were, kind of riding on that and didn't say that would bother them. The big concern I have here is that, in all honesty, after polling several people, really having this conversation over a couple of years now in the central office, but today talking to individuals about what they do and does it take any less time to do South Bristol, except for special ed, which I think Kelly says more than 10%, but it's not equal to the rest. Entire business office payroll, accounts payable, everybody,
It's all the same.
Superintendent's office, it's all 25% time and effort.
Yeah.
And it just becomes, it's my job to point out the fairness of these numbers, no matter whether people want to hear it or not. So I can't say that when I look at that, I can bring that and not draw attention to this issue.
So every school, regardless of number of students, is utilizing the same amount of services and stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't take us, and you can understand it, you start looking at what actually happens. You do a payroll, well, there's, 10 more teachers in one than the other. The process of doing the payroll, uploading the files, checking it and everything, doesn't take any less. Doing the 941 quarterly tax report, doesn't matter what the amount is, it's still filing the report. I would have expected, when I talked to Myra, to say it takes a little less time to do South Bristol, it takes just as much time. And for the whole process, one and the other. Same thing with it's just as many bills, it's just smaller money. So doing all the check runs and everything, it's the same amount of time. We pulled audits last week. Took just as much time to fill the South Bristol box as the Jefferson box. You still have to go pull about 30 invoices and get the same grant documents and everything. So it takes an equal amount of time. We do everything that we do in this room, we do in South Bristol. It takes all that time and energy. And so the concept that was put forward in this meeting is to start having two columns here, if you will. One in which we say, okay, a certain percentage, maybe 40%, is equal for everybody. And then something around 60% would be shared by the number of pupils. Something that would, I don't think we're going to get to an even split with everybody, because that would be a huge hit all at once. And I think
It would even be a huge hit. So we're going to have an increase too, right? Because we're number 2 in rank. Our hit, as you can see where we are percentage-wise, if we did it, isn't going to be quite as bad. So the two highest schools come down a bit, and the two lowest go up. And it's just the way it is. But I truly believe we ought to all be on closer to the same page. Because if everything takes the same amount of time, then why is somebody paying a lot less?
Right. So the only real argument anyone can bring is the use of special services varying from school to school based on need.
But that's why we'd still be doing, say, a 40-60 split.
Right. Is there a way to go off of prior?
And I'd also caution on that too, because you could have one student
That costs you.
who costs a significant amount and requires a significant amount more time than 5 students in another school. So just to say it's based on the number of students, it really comes down to the individual student's needs. and the services that they require.
So what I'll do, is, based on the information I have, is I promise to show a few different options now. In this next year's budget, we're looking at the special services out of a 1.2 million budget. We're looking at 332, almost a quarter of the budget. So if a quarter of the budget is about 15% of the whole, and 75% is 25%, I'll look at those numbers. And so a fair number might be 20% though, and that's going to be 250,000 for South Bristol, not the 150 that was discussed last night. And so I think that'll be the conversations. I just want to set the stage with that.
Yeah.
But I think Todd, you'll need to look into this, make sure if you need the full 7 members, and they need to at least show up to abstain.
And I already have one board member I know from Great Salt Bay that has said they don't see a reason for them to be there on Tuesday night. So
Yeah, so
I know one of them said he was gonna be there.
that's also the same one.
I didn't think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we were trying to do it in a small hit. That was the other reason, maybe grow eventually. That's why we figured them being good with 150, that's a good place to start till we can bring it more even. So anyway, that's gonna be a lot of the discussion Tuesday, now especially, in the budget. Superintendent's
Me?
report.
Okay. Yeah, very quickly, on the 23rd of October, I was at the MSSA annual meeting, which is the Maine School Superintendent's Association in Augusta. That happens annually. And then the 2 days following that, the 24th and 25th, both Lindsay and I should say were there. I was at the MSMA annual fall conference in Augusta as well. Participated in a Chapter 128 MDOE meeting that talks about your truancy and absenteeism. That was on 10/29. I met with Jeff Burrows last Friday at Lincoln Academy just to get a lay of the land for where our students go to school. And December, I'll be going over to Erskine Academy just to see theirs because we sent some students there as well. And then I was going to mention Energy Management Consultants, which is a group that I've worked with previous in a prior district. Gentleman, the president of that company, actually came and did a presentation for the Buildings Committee earlier today. And they will come and do an energy audit of all our buildings free of charge, and then they will come and do a presentation to the board, and it will give you an idea. I know that the Facilities Committee is working hard to create a comprehensive capital improvement plan, identifying things that need to be taken care of over the next 10 years or so. This will give another lens to support the work that group's doing. And then it'll be information that can be brought to the board and decisions can be made about what, where, when, and how. So, but there's no charge. It's a free unless we decide to pursue some kind of a project with them. So that's it.
Can I ask a question about Jeff Burrows? Is there been any discussion about him releasing test scores from students from our different schools in the AOS?
It hasn't come up, but I could ask. We're going to start meeting.
I guess they haven't offered that.
Okay.
When we've requested
He did express a desire to work more closely with the district and a willingness to do so. I guess maybe it was pre-pandemic. I don't know, but superintendent, I think he said Lindsay, so it would have been maybe right after the pandemic, but there was some meeting going on, I believe, between the district and Lincoln. But for some reason that ceased. But he's certainly willing to start that up again with both Lindsay and myself.
Yeah, he came to a meeting, was it last year or the year before?
He said he used to do that too.
Yeah,
He said he would come to meetings. He said he's willing to do that again as well. So I do think there's a willingness on the side of Lincoln Academy to be more collaborative than perhaps in the past and work more closely with the district. I mean, it's our kids.
Right.
It only benefits us to work closely with them. So
That's a difference to a private institute that relies on public funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Adam, principal's report.
All right, I'll highlight a few things on the report. I just want to give a teacher shout out to Sarah Plummer. She's a teacher and she has been using some of her planning time to work one-on-one with some students for enrichment and intervention. So there's this scenario where there's some kids that's like incredible musician, so she'll spend a lot of time in. There's some situations where there's kids that just aren't able to be successful in the whole group for music, and she's been taking time to do individual stuff with them. So just kind of really stepping up to, again, meet kids' needs, which is for that. we were asking earlier about the staff, so Marina Hingston and Carmen Salerno, they've joined SSC staff to shore up with the services in there. MPTO raised $2,200, our now annual Emmy Award fundraiser, which was a huge thing, which is really great. Our cheering club, which is funded through a grant that we wrote last year, there are 18 kids who signed up for the cheering team. It's like the biggest team, I think, in the building right now.
Biggest team in the district.
Yeah.
And there are kids, some kids that are cheering and playing basketball, so there's like, keep them busy, keep the kids busy. What else on here? So we're continuing our staff book study, next generation. We had our last staff meeting day. We talked about, we finished part 2 of that. And that's conversations great. Having run those. Fire department came in, did a safety presentation with K8. I spoke to the chief, and no one could remember when the last time they were in the building to do stuff with the grades. So like, you want to do the whole school? Like, yeah, it's the whole school. So everybody went outside, went out by the fire truck. It was a beautiful day. Everyone got plastic hats and learned about fire safety, which was really great. I also didn't add to this, but the staff did a fire extinguisher training the day that I unfortunately was not there that day because I actually got to use the fire extinguishers to put out a fire.
No, we didn't get to put out a fire.
No real fire.
No, I wanted to, and like,
Chef's pulling away.
Okay. Anyone listening on the video, there was no real fires.
Anyway, so we're gonna get trained on that. That's connected to our facilities and grounds, the Maine Municipal Association. Somebody came through in September and kind of recommended a bunch of, like, they do the whole building, kind of tell us things that we need to like upgrade and fix, and looking at our safety protocols, and we realized we hadn't done a fire extinguisher training here probably ever, so we got on that, got that scheduled with the fire department. So it's good to be collaborating with them. And we're up to, it says 142, I think we're at 143. That's
that page.
I'm assuming it was the even pages that didn't get
How
copied.
many is there?
143, so we had a kid that left with them to get homeschooled and came back before this, after this was printed up, so we're at 143. We had 3 students moved into the district for the moment, a few weeks. So, yeah.
I'm gonna,
That's about where we were last year too. It's pretty steady.
if I could, real quick, second grade, how many kids?
Second grade,
I don't have any, the numbers in front of us.
14, second grade,
14, third grade,
20.
20,
fourth,
22,
seventh,
10,
and eighth.
18.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make sure the full agenda gets emailed to you all tomorrow.
Appreciate that. Kind of split the
And
agenda
that,
up a little bit in here.
the 143 student would be, or so that'd be 20, correct?
We're at 20. He left and came back.
Yeah, okay, all right, so maybe the number is.
So you stayed the same.
Maybe the number did get adjusted, so.
Thank you.
How many kids do we have in on superintendent's agreement versus how many are out?
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
question I just asked last night.
Oh.
Is it the same?
Is it 13?
I
No,
don't remember off the top of my
sorry.
head.
So we had,
I remember I shared it with you.
I have it on my last,
Okay.
last times.
I thought
There
it
was-
was it 13? That's
For
no.
some reason I was, so we,
Let me see if I can find it.
yeah, but it wasn't 13, all superintendent's agreements. 5 or 6 of them were building houses in town.
Oh, construction, yeah.
Construction.
2 were tuition. One
One of
was
those Alma
tuition.
kids?
I think so.
So the money
Um,
comes with that.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
come with
tuition they do.
14,000.
Even though it costs like 23 or something.
Yeah, there's no save. I mean, it's better than nothing.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
But I don't remember now off the top of my head how many were.
Let me see.
I think the upper grades, I think it was 6th and 7th grade.
I think you were going to
There was
lose. You were going to lose
3.
3.
We're gonna lose 3.
Hmm.
'Cause, yeah, of course, everybody knows where I stand on that.
So do I.
But yeah, so there were only 3 that were actually, I think, other districts, if I remember right. rest of them all had reasoning, or they?
Yeah. There wasn't a significant number.
Yeah, they were in town or moving in town.
Yeah.
And had proved.
How often are those check-ins? Is it just once?
You have to,
beginning of
superintendent's
the-
agreement have to occur every year.
Okay, so
And,
just.
and once you agree to one, you used to be able to cease them through the
Okay.
middle of the year if you want. Now, once you agree to a superintendent's agreement,
Here, got it.
it has to go
You got
through
it.
the entire year.
Okay,
The other thing too is that even if superintendent, and Matt won't like hearing this, but even if superintendents deny an agreement, a lot of the denials are being overturned by the State Board of Education. If the parents make a justification that sways it, even if the deputy commissioner or the commissioner support the superintendents, parents can then take it to another level to the State Board of Education. And they have been, I happen to sit next to a State Board of Education member at that MSMA conference, and I shared a little concerns with that individual, but they can overturn the denial.
So I guess my question to that real quick, with that being overturned, we're not legally allowed to charge for tuition on a superintendent's agreement.
Correct.
But if we're overridden, can we charge tuition?
I don't believe so. I think if we were to say that, I'm pretty confident if we were to say that it was going to cause a staffing issue for us and that it would require the district to hire another teacher or support staff or something like that, I have to believe that the state board would support the denial if that was the case.
And also, it's also stated if they cost us anything, correct? Or is that
No, what do you mean if they cost us?
meaning if they come here and there's,
Special needs or something?
well, yeah, special needs can't, right?
Anyone can get a superintendent's
They
agreement.
can,
They
yeah.
can.
They can't.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't.
No.
You can't deny
Okay,
it.
I
No.
thought there was any added expense to
No,
the town.
No, you don't get any kind of additional compensation on a superintendent's agreement.
Right,
Tuition you do.
but a superintendent's agreement, isn't it, that you're not supposed to if there's gonna be incurred cost?
That would not stand up probably as a denial at the state level, I know.
How long does that process take if the parents keep pursuing the process?
We just had one the beginning of this year that I would say it started when Lindsay was superintendent, so it started at the beginning. The request was made in the spring of last year. It was denied over the summer. They came back with the transition, as you can imagine, they may, and tried to pursue it with me, the same superintendent, with a different superintendent. I denied it as well. They reached out to the commissioner of education, I would say the commissioner's office is pretty quick to respond. I would say it probably was within a week or two. They supported our decision, and then the parents took it to the state board of education, and I would say that was probably another 2-week window. So I'd say a couple months maybe.
So if the school year occurs during that process, do they go to the town that they live in currently, or are they here awaiting?
They wouldn't be here.
Okay.
They wouldn't come here until it's been approved.
Can they agree on it mid-year?
Yep, you can bring students in mid-year, superintendent's agreement mid-year. The only benefit you get from a superintendent's, well, I shouldn't say the only benefit, there could be many benefits of a student coming in depending on what they bring to the building. But they do assist you in your student count with your ED 279, but that's about the only. But I've always said if it puts a financial burden on the school, meaning new staffing or something like that, we can do that. So that's a grounds for denial. We've had to deny them because classes is too big.
Mhm.
Did you say you found the numbers? Did you just share those while I was talking?
No.
Oh, okay.
What I have written the last time we went over it was 9 coming in, 2 going out.
And I think of those 9, like
But
you
out of
said,
those 9, some of them are building here.
6, I think it was like
With
5 or
building
6 of them.
permits.
So I think it brought it down to about 4 and 2.
Yeah, I think that's, you got it written down.
I don't know if I got building permits, but 4 of the 9. Oh, 3, I do, 3 finishing up houses with permits.
And then 4 of them were.
Middle school, 6 are from AOS 93.
Okay. Well,
Not
Thank you.
13.
it's not 13. I knew there was a few. Thank you, Adam. Let's see, financial report, right? Right,
Is that where we are?
I think so.
Okay. So you have in your packets the end of month October financial statements, which will be called the comparative financial statements, I guess, because they set out the funds put at the top of them. And in going through, there's a couple of things. Most things are fine, on track, everything's going well. We now have a couple of months of school operating under our belts to be able to see what's actually happening. And we also have the finalized teacher CBA, all caught up and in here and everything, so we ran that. So that's all being reported now, so we're starting to see better actuals of where we're gonna end up this year with the encumbrances, et cetera. There were a couple of things that I noticed when I was doing this. One's right glaringly in the second line here, where ed techs were way over budget, regular ed. And they're also just slightly over budget in special ed. So that caused Adam and I a couple of hours of work the other day looking at where everybody was. And it raised some other issues about where we stand, how we're operating in special ed. And this is where I just want to draw your attention, because basically there's a couple people in the regular ed tech lines that were added when school started that should be in special ed. But they're, in addition to the special ed tech lines, they are, what's going on here? And I'm glad Kelly's here and Adam's here to fill in any gaps I leave. But just from a financial perspective, we budgeted, and you can see it at the bottom of the special ed section. Where's that? There, sorry, it's at the bottom. It's in the bottom of what I looked at. If you look at lines, these lines aren't numbered. If you go to this first page of special ed, and you go about maybe 15 lines in, and you see traditional private schools is in their place. And one line is for 345, and one line is for 128. 345 has 220 of that was for behavior students to go down to Compass in Bristol, and that's what we thought was going to happen when we budgeted last year. And then the other 125 that gets us to 345 was for a student to go first. Okay. Now the student is going to Jefferson, but when Kelly worked out with following the creating an MOU, memorandum of understanding with Jefferson following the DOE sped tuition guidelines, it came in a lot less than the 125. It's closer to 75. And that's what Adam and I worked out the other day. So on that one line, we have a savings of close to $50,000. And then the 220 down Bristol isn't happening at all. But the two students that require that's in the behavior program, we have to provide that here. So two support center, what's the SSD stand for again? Special support student support center. Two additional staff members were added to provide those two students with what they need in that facility. And that's why the ed tech lines are running hot. Okay. And so what we're doing in addition to spending money for two additional ed techs for that program is that they have to be picked up in a van, and that's $300 a day. That's $52,500 a day. I mean, excuse me, not a day, a year at $300 a day. So we have two ed techs, significant transportation costs. Still doesn't add up to 220. It adds up to, this is the calculations we were just getting to. It adds up, I gotta kind of like fine tune what I check the benefits and everything, but I think it adds up to something closer to about 160, 175. And that's gonna leave, in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 still in that line. But what we talked about at the facilities meeting tonight before this meeting was that the room isn't really fully set up to do what's going on in there. And so what the facilities committee is going to be discussing with Kelly, with Adam, with Todd over the next several weeks is what would it cost to improve that facility so that we can actually have the behavior program that is now in this building.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a lot of movement. It will cause a couple of, if we, we're going to have to move $52,500 from special ed to transportation, and that's going to be a cost center transaction. And then the, shift, and then some would have to go to facilities as well. So we might be in a situation where we'll exceed the 5%, or, so we're going to be in a situation where we're talking about that. This is all happening like in real time right now. We've just got things settled and underway, and got this in, the operation was built first. Now we got to go and get it all to line up in the budget. We know we have the funds. We just don't know exactly how it's up. We don't know what it's going to cost to improve the facility, and we don't know exactly how it's all gonna settle. There's a little bit of, you'll see the next line in the agenda, there's some, people changing positions here and stuff. So I gotta let the dust fall where it may in a few places. But I'm confident after reviewing this with Adam, talking to Todd and Kelly about what we're doing, the money's there. We just have to manage this pretty well, going forward, and have more information for you next month about what's actually happening.
Can I ask you a question on that, Peter? Didn't we have permission from the town to move more than 5%?
Yeah, I don't think that
Didn't we
lasts
make it a
forever.
warrant every year? I thought it was something we voted on every year that we got permission to move more than 5%
Yeah.
from a cost center.
We have to put that in the warrant every year. And I think we did it a few years ago, and I think we would have to do it again this coming year.
Right, okay.
But that's the mechanism. But I just bring it to your attention whenever it exceeds 5%, because that's all I can really, like, I can slide 5% around just to make the books balance for you.
Right.
Beyond that, I have to tell you what's going on. So I'm just telling you that's gonna be happening, and we'll have to deal with it through that mechanism.
Thank you.
And does it come to the board?
If it exceeds 5%, I would say you guys.
But over, if it's not in the warrant, does it have to go to the town?
Yes, yes.
It has to go to town vote, right?
That's why we had a warrant increase it, I believe, to 10%.
Pretty sure, yeah. So we'll take care of that. I think we with the March meeting.
Yep.
And, but we're watching that and worked with everybody this week, the last few days, to say, all eyes on this. We're shifting things around. It's not what we thought it's not the way we budgeted. Is the money. That's why we put the money in there, because we knew something's gonna happen. We don't know what it is. Let's set the right amount in. And it's working out the way we pretty much set just the right amount.
Is that first student that has the band? Thank you.
So that's one thing to pay attention to in here. There are other lines in this that we're still working out where payroll is coming out of a different line than we budgeted. So you see a line that's budgeted with nothing drawn out of it, line below it, numbers are slightly different where it wasn't budgeted, but money's coming out of it. We're aware that we're cleaning all that up. It's part of the migration. And then if I can get you to look, you don't really have to look so much at it, but dropping down to the things are running pretty much where they should be in all the cost centers, but in facilities, we just had a meeting tonight to look at, again, a number of things that are happening in that cost center that are not exactly as planned. We set some money aside to do some windows, but that was actioned earlier than we expected and happened in June of last year, which freed up $20,000, close to $19,521, I think it was, for this budget. But then we had some unexpected things happen already this year, some boiler repairs and some wood chips that were needed, which get us over 10,000 of that's now already spent. And then we have other things we're watching. There's a good conversation here about how the money that we have budgeted will be spent. And there's also the observation that it's only October and we've gotten hit with $10,000 for unexpected things, and we haven't even got through the heating season yet. Which is one of the reasons that it was our May meeting. I said, let's not jump in and start too many facilities projects until we see what we get hit with and talk about it in April. So I'm really glad that this facilities committee exists and that we're watching that and can talk about the projects now. We didn't have that before. And just listening here tonight, participating in the meeting, it's an important area to kind of keep track of what's going on. And I think Matt would agree that we're on top of it.
Yeah.
And so that's what's going on there. And that's what I had to report financially. But everything, because of everybody's attention on those issues that I just discussed, we're okay. But that's a very dynamic bunch of activity in the first couple months of school. And we'll be tracking it. And then when we get to the budgeting, we'll be looking back at how we prepared for that and how we made it through, see if we should do things the same or differently. We have, we made the move to get the operation going with the behavioral students when Bristol wasn't able to take them, or I don't want to speak for why they didn't go, but when they didn't go to Bristol, we had to, kind of manage the situation here. A lot of choices were made that we'll have to revisit when we build next year's budget to sustain that, and we're aware of that.
So the one question I have, and maybe I've looked over the line 100 times, Peter, legal fees. I cannot find that line, and it should be an easy one to find because it should be a negative.
Yeah, you do pay on that. If you go to cost center 006, system administration, just says system. And this is where the school board, it's just a small one, small section, has school board liability insurance, et cetera. And school board advertising, dues, conferences, auditor services, legal fees. You budgeted 2,500, you're already at pretty close to 13,000.
And that was as of before the last warrant.
Top of the page, what's it say?
Because there's another bill.
Yeah, this is,
It was before the last one. I think we're in 16 something now. When I just, with the last warrant we just signed, I think we're at 16.4 on legal fees.
okay.
Just to throw that in there, because that's
Yep,
gonna be another thing we,
We saw that coming.
right? It was just,
The,
so everybody knows we're way over on it.
And, you know, so we had to decide at some point where we're gonna cut back to kind of cover that. So we're early enough in the year, we know from the facilities budget, for example, we haven't exhausted that. We shouldn't go right to the end of the facilities budget until we've already decided where we're gonna get this 15 grand we're short on, you know, for the legal fees.
Now, would the, or what is it called, mediator? Would
Mediator paid, and
But does that come under the same line item, or is that a different line item
it should be,
in the same
there
area?
is a line that you didn't budget for that is for mediation services that should typically sit right next to that. But it wasn't put in there this year because the bill was received last year, paid last year.
Okay,
So
gotcha. So it's
You
not
pay that up
this-
front, you have to pay that up
pay
front
that up
before the
front, and that
mediation
was
even
last
begins.
June.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is a chunk of change that we have to watch. It's not a surprise, but it's
Thank you.
it's a chunk of change. And now that
You
we've
want a
got
complete
things sort of moving
packet?
forward,
Thank
you know, we'll keep an eye on all of that and we'll be able to report back next month with even more, you know, sort of updates to what's happening.
Does anyone know what our heating fuel was locked in at?
Look it up. I did lock it in.
If that rate goes down, do we have savings or are we locked in at that cost?
So, you know, we theoretically or by contract we're locked in, but Colby and Gale has always been good to us and making price drops. They have been taking care of us. Let me see what the locked-in rate was. There we go. It's not my link, it's too old. My link expired to the DocuSign contract.
That's okay if you just want to provide it at some point. It doesn't have to be right now. I'm curious.
Yeah, no, but I locked in, you can see the date I locked in. October 12th. And I got actually, Colby and Gale was on watch for me to get the best price to lock in. But I'll find you the number.
Okay, thank you.
And we locked in, you know, we were talking earlier in the facilities meeting the other day about the, how we locked into the, or how we got into efficiency vehicle lights and that we didn't experience low kilowatt hours,
Right.
but we did. If you remember, I told you, I don't know, sometime late last winter, that there was a real drop in the price of
Electricity.
propane, so I was able to, or natural gas, so I was able to lock in at like 9.6 for kilowatt hours, and that bill starts, it was right around Thanksgiving, that when the previous contract expired at 13.5, it'll drop down to 19.5, I guess, like next week. So we're about to see probably a real good drop in our electric bills going forward, you know, at the end of December.
I can probably shoot everybody also a message on what we're gonna pay for fuel oil. I have an inside scoop.
You mean it's not what we locked in at?
No, I can tell you what you locked in at with a quick phone call.
Okay.
The knows a girl. Okay, appreciate it, Peter.
Yeah.
Facility maintenance report, Adam?
Yeah, so Todd already touched upon, we met with the energy management consultant representative, talked about, efficiency project, actually, at the school. We have been looking over our, like a 10-year capital improvement plan. At this point, we're starting to identify projects that we want to see in next year's skills We had conversations about the windows, the window project, like when we're gonna be able to put those in. We had wood chips delivered and spread out, thanks to Matt. The playground area makes that's a lot spongier, a lot safer now than it was before. There was some unexpected boiler issue that needed to be addressed, which was like close to $9,000. So we're looking closely at our facilities maintenance budget just to make sure we're looking to get our bathroom, the bathroom stalls. Those are in the providers. Those are in the budget this year. Looking to put those in. And we talked a little bit about quiet room. This is connected to our SSE conversation earlier tonight. I'm looking to upgrade the quiet room that we have in the SSE so they're safer for students. That's going to require some getting an estimate from some company and then having work done. That's going to make the glass that's in the door safer and also putting in mats on the walls. So that's. We talked a little bit about the next step for the parking lot. Is going to be to flatten it out, get the trees out, and that's a lot of work with trying to find out what the cost of that's going to be. Whether it's something we can do this year or we put it into the budget request for next year. That covers the big topics. I was very envious of the spreadsheet that the energy consultant came with. Like,
It was good.
That was a good
my
one.
poor little 10-year spreadsheet looked pretty sad in comparison.
Is that George's Valley education?
Can I ask a couple of questions on that? Sorry. Can I ask a couple of questions? Sorry for them all tonight. I'm just trying to get caught up on stuff. For the parking lot project, is that something that we legally have to put out to bid publicly to have work done? Where the money's coming from us?
You have your own policies.
I was
It's
gonna
not
say,
federal money, so you have to follow the federal procurement guidelines. But
Right.
You do have your own policies on what you put out to bid, and yes, you.
I was gonna say anything over, are we 5,000?
I think it's more, I think it's higher than that, more like 25, but,
Okay.
but it could be somewhere lower. Every school's different. I have to go read the
I just
policies.
remember in the past being told that we had to put certain things out to bid. We had to advertise it,
Yeah.
basically.
And that's what we do.
And then
with-
picking
I mean,
and
I
choosing,
do that
right?
routinely with even like window replacements and stuff, you know? Anything that's a chunky item, like more than, whether it's 15 or 20 or 25, I'm not sure. It depends on which school is set up. But once it gets into a number like that, I mean, you gotta get quotes anyway, you know, you're not just gonna take the first thing somebody says. So it generally triggers, okay, we gotta put that in the paper. And we have and it goes on our website, and we tell people the date that they have to submit it and everything. So yes, that would be something that we would have to do. We do it with snow plowing and the grass
Right.
keeping and everything.
Yeah.
I think it just looks better, transparency wise too.
Definitely.
You know, it's,
The other question I had, Adam, was, I didn't get a chance to ask at the facilities meeting, the dividers in the music room, those are still operating and safe? I know that they've been scrubbed many times from being replaced.
That's one of the lists of things that needs to
Oh, the,
fix.
Are they still safe for the kept open and
They're
closed?
just safe, but they're not working properly.
Okay.
We have there's an estimate on that, and that's on, I believe it's on this year's.
Okay.
And it's not this year's, it's gonna be on next year's request.
Okay.
I think it's like 1,700 or something like that to get fixed.
Better than replacing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
appreciate it, Adam. Correspondence, communication. Letter of resignation.
oh, no.
Does anybody wanna say anything on that, Adam?
So Emma Golds was the SSC case manager, and she resigned from that position as of the 7th, November 7th. So we posted for that position, and the hope is that we'll get a candidate at this point of the year, but so we gets motivated to take on a job like that at this point of the year. So we have plans in place to kind of address that need in-house. So Angela Mills is taking on, she's our resource room case manager. She's already got a pretty substantial caseload, but she's taking on services for students and some of the other aspects of the job that are kind of like more clerical related that sometimes case managers do. And techs have offered to put in some more time after school to kind of get some of those pieces there. We've got, thankfully we have, at the beginning of the year, I asked for 2 days with our behavior consultant to come and work in the room to kind of help out with training around techs and working with case manager. So, having that person here 2 days a week is really helpful to kind of support staff. And then we have one guest teacher who's spent a lot of time working in programs like this over the past few decades, who loves guest teaching in there, and she's committed to working there 2 days a week and kind of fill in some of the extra needs in there as well. But certainly it's challenging when somebody leaves mid-year, but I think for everybody's interest.
Do we do exit interviews, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do an official exit interview, but we've had conversations for a while leading up to her resignation.
And sorry, I again do that.
Go for it.
She's still gonna be working in the building, correct?
So there's one of the ed tech positions that's we're not working with a student. It's a student that's not in the SSC, but who has significant needs that basically she's transferred to moving into that position, ed tech position. So we're stepping down from the case manager role and moving into ed tech positions.
Maybe we can't answer this, for privacy issues, but where we've gone through like 2 within less than 2 years, do you think in general it's a function of the job? Or, I mean, I know it's like a very demanding job.
It's the H position is kind of like the person that left us last year was seeking administrative work. And she was, she loved the job and loved it here. She would stay here, but she was seeking like another position. But I do think just in generally, it's hard to fill these roles. I think Jefferson has 2 positions that are been open. I think, I don't know if Bristol has an open position or not. I think a lot of these jobs are hard to fill. And I could talk a long time about the reasons why and like some possible solutions to that. But certainly.
But you shared some data earlier that.
Yeah, I shared some data earlier, and part of it for me, it's really important for us as a group to have programs that are predictable and well-staffed, and people have the support they need to grow. And I say this a lot, in programs like that, you need to have more than what you think you need staff, because all it takes is one day where you don't have enough people, and that makes for a really bad day. I am called over to that room 10 times a day. Like anytime there's something that's starting to like escalate, like I want to be there. And so anytime there's a chapter 33, I want to be in the room. So I make a call or say, yeah, it's time. So that it's it's a big responsibility for just to put on one case manager's shoulder. So best programs are the one where everyone feels empowered to knows what's happening, knows what's going on, is able to time to debrief with each other, like how did that go? Can we do it differently next time? What do we in this situation? It takes time, resources, and people, and space. So those are all factors. And because there's not a lot of people that are necessarily necessarily going into that work. You know, we're competing with other schools, like other schools' programs. Like I have, there's someone who's interested in this job who won't leave this year, but they'll apply next year, but it's gonna leave a program without a staff, without a person. If they come here, it's gonna leave a program without a case manager. I'm thankful that there's people that know our school and know the people that are working here and want to be a part of that. But in order to keep people wanting to come and try out our program here, it's like they need to know that great ed techs that are. That's another thing I think it needs. That's a shout out. That wasn't written down, but like the ed techs that are working in this program are the strongest group of ed techs that I've worked with as far as the behavior program. They're working hard to kind of keep the kids learning, keep them safe. And I want to keep them here. So I want to keep them here. We have to make sure that they're led by somebody who's got communication skills, safety skills. Feels that it's a collaborative team as a team. I think that's important. Anybody, people would be very fortunate to land in this position of the techs that we have working.
Appreciate it. Old business, we don't have
I
any.
should have a motion to accept the resignation.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I guess someone want a motion to
I'll
accept.
make a motion to accept the letter of resignation from Nobleboro.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Old business, we don't have any. New business, AOS 93 central office staffing discussion.
This is that presentation that you put together.
You want to see it?
We can put it up there. I shared it with this group already because I wanted them to have it before the AOS board. I just wanted to share with, it's actually a collaborative project between Peter, myself, and Kelly, just to show you what the responsibilities are of the central office. And I wanted that to get out before the AOS board meeting last night, but we would have normally met Monday, but because it was a holiday, we got pushed back behind the AOS board meeting. So I'll go through very quickly, as will Kelly and Peter.
Thank you, Kelly. Kelly reminded me we have an updated version on it.
Oh. Do I have an updated version?
Yeah, I just.
Okay.
I had that
The one I
earlier
shared?
version,
Okay, good.
And,
All right.
I can pull it up.
And Peter's already mentioned some of the things about this that just wanted to bring to the attention is the needs of the buildings, regardless of the size. It takes a lot of effort on a lot of different people's parts. So I just wanted to share with you who we have currently, because we are finally fully staffed at central office. As you know, you may not, you were here during some of it went on. We had a person in position, lost them, brought someone else in, then turned around and lost them. So now we have a third person in, and I think we've got the ship stabled a little bit right now. Now the challenge is to continue to support those people so that we get through the migration, which has been a challenge. We get through the withdrawal of Great Salt Bay, which has been a challenge as well. It's just a perfect storm of things. They have a new superintendent they're working with, so it's
Okay, just move this.
We're using the whole building now, right?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Peter and I are upstairs
Okay.
with one of our support staff upstairs, and then the
There.
business is all down.
You could
Do
click
we
the
predict
mirror.
on losing anybody
Right now you have it on separate.
You mean with
with
us
July 1st?
going first forward? There's what Matt's subtly alluding to is that Great Salt Bay will be looking to fill some positions because obviously we're not going through an educational service center, so they're going to need to staff their own special ed department. They're going to need to staff their own business office. So I think what you're asking is, do I anticipate anyone maybe from AOS 93 having interest in Great Salt Bay? I can't say for certain. No one has told me. Lindsay and I have already had some of these discussions. We can't fault them if they do. We want to support them, but so I can't say. And no one's given me tip their hand to me that they may want to do that. But that's definitely a distinct possibility. So here we are, we've got some people trained in Aptifund, and it's taken a while, and then we may have to go through the whole process of bringing someone new in and training them all over again. But because of what Peter's doing with the department, we're doing a lot of cross-training so that we've got, everybody has some experience in payroll now. That wasn't the case before. So when you lose someone, you're starting from scratch. Now we at least have some people who have a working knowledge of how those, and we're cross-training in a variety of areas, so that we can, it would still be a loss. If we lose any of our people, it'll be a loss, a significant loss, but getting back up to speed should not take us as long as it has previously. And Peter's very confident in Aptifund, as he's been spent more and more time working on it, that it will be, in the long run, it will be good for us. It's just, you say that word now and people cringe, and it's just, it's not a pleasant word right now in the district, but the anticipation is that it will be. So quickly, I'm going to go through very quickly. You already had this. Well, not that quickly. I did that. Peter tends to like to expand on things. So down at Bristol, I was hitting the slides on him a little quick. Very quickly. Payback. And myself, Linda Skiff, the executive assistant, and Wendy Betts is our ESEA coordinator. That's title funds. It's our federal funds. There's a lot of paperwork that goes into that, and you got to make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's. And she's really looking at ways that we can better utilize our funds moving forward, because tight budget times, the more that we have, the more we can utilize those funds, the better. All our schools are school-wide now, title schools, which means every teacher in the building, in essence, is a title teacher. Every student in the building can be received title support. So that's a change. So we had the DOE came in, sent a team down from Augusta and met with the administrative team to go over the difference between targeted and school-wide. And I think everyone I heard thought it was a great presentation and left with some good information. So I do have to applaud the administrators, how collaboratively they've been working together as we anticipate or prepare for this separation. It's been I say at every board meeting, I rave about the administrative team. I'm very fortunate to have them, and I think I see good things for us down the road as a collective group. Very quickly, all the things, this is what falls under the role of the superintendent, and I did look through them all, and I do think I touch on all of these, but communication, leadership, I'm not going to read these to you. I'm just going to read the bold to you. Supervision, evaluation, school finance, operations management, community relations. Those are all just little definitions after it. You're all intelligent people in this room. You could probably just surmise what those are. School community involvement, school improvement, curriculum, superintendent board relations, staff development, personnel management, facilities management. And then what I did was I provided examples for you just of each one of those. And I'm not going to read, I hate it when people read slides. You have it already. So you can go through. If you have any questions though, as you look through these, don't hesitate to reach out to me and ask. It was decided at the AOS board meeting that it's just going to be the 4 boards that I work with that are going to do my evaluation. This will obviously be a discussion point in the evaluation. And that Great Salt Bay will handle Lindsay's evaluation. That only makes sense. And Christian is going to step up. And so he's going to take the charge, lead on that. That's just moving forward. And these will be all things, you can go through them, Peter. These will be all things that fall into that tool. It's a fun job. The executive assistant to me, this is Linda, as we said. So these are all just things that she does. You can see a lot of it is board calendars, board packet organization. Chat about that. And things like that. People make mistakes, it happens. But these are all the support that she provides for me. And I do say, I would say everyone, Peter said this, I'm stealing his thunder a little bit, but everyone in central office has really stepped up. And I can't say what it was like in the past, but the people that have been there will say that people are working to a higher degree now than they probably have in the past. Go ahead, Peter. The ESA coordinator, this talks about, she's a professional grant writer. So the information that we're providing is spot on. The data that we're collecting is spot on, so that we are getting the bigger bang for the buck. And she's also helping with some outlier grants. So she's branching off to provide some support and some other grant work as well.
All right, special services team. There's 3 of us. Darcy joined us last school year as the assistant director. Jerry's been with us for a long time. I'm not going to read all of my duties, you can go on to the next slide. But there's a list under administrative and leadership. I'd say that top one, provide real-time problem-solving support to building teams. That's a big one this year and in the last few years. Without the assistant director, that probably wouldn't be possible. There's so much to do. The staffing shortages has been a huge issue the last couple of years, and our assistant director has had to fill in as a case manager at times. Also, on that line, I would say the other big one is really, oversight of all the special services going on in those schools and the programming and what's needed, the coordinating. I'm heavily involved with the budgeting process the last number of years. I work with each of the boards. I work with Peter. I work with the principals. I also manage the local entitlement IDEA grant for each of the districts. And it takes the same amount of time. It doesn't matter South Bristol versus Jefferson or Great Salt Bay. It all takes the same amount of time, that aspect of it. My office does all of the invoices and ordering and coding of bills related to those grants. And then also in recent years, we've been contracting a lot of staff. And so we process all of those bills as well. On the next slide, just some more responsibilities. There's a lot of them. Legal and compliance is a big one in special education. We manage all of the paperwork that all the case managers are doing at the school level. We review it. We make sure it's legally correct. There's monitoring with the state every few years. Student management, of course. Recently, pre-K is coming into the mix of things, but when students are entering kindergarten at Nobleboro, we hold spring meetings to transition them. When 8th graders at Nobleboro are transitioning up to high school, we hold transition meetings. Some students require really specialized programming that Nobleboro can't provide or Lincoln Academy can't provide, so it's making referrals to out-of-district placements. There's a lot of work related to parent relations, hiring and resources. The last slide is our admin assistant and what her responsibilities are. She schedules IEP meetings. She maintains a database that all our districts use for 504 plans and IEPs, adding students, exiting students. She helps with all those state reports we're doing. And as I said earlier, the local entitlement, the management of that. And that's just a quick overview of what we do, special services. But again, you can reach out to me as well if you have questions about that list.
Seeing that whole list, I just want to segue here from what Kelly just presented to what I'm about to present. And a conversation that Kelly and I have had a few times is it's the outliers that are really getting us. And when you have that many responsibilities and that big an operation, and as Kelly showed, there's a lot of transactional information with the grants and managing the grants and all the different funding sources and specialized rules around that. And that takes a lot of work. Then there's all the actual instructional, educational, working with the people and the students and the teachers, et cetera, that she does. I have the same kind of thing with all the different things we're doing. And then you get thrown something sideways, and from either the state or from a certain grant or from a situation in one of the schools. These outliers end up taking over your time, so that we've built an operation that can kind of hum along. But if you're throwing kind of sticks in the spokes of the wheels all the time, you're just getting we really feel that we've in our careers in education. Kelly's is longer in education than mine is in education, but it's happening more and more all the time, and that's why we're like looking at as we move into a different configuration of 4 towns now, and we think about, can we do this with less people? It's like the honest answer, no. we can barely keep up with everything that's coming at us. We can't keep up with everything that's coming at us now. We may be better at keeping up with us without GSB involved, but the amount of things that we're getting hit with, like DHHS dropping 3-year-olds, all of a sudden you got to build a whole new program under deadline and things like that. This stuff it's real, and it feels just like something every day is coming at you that's not part of the operation you build. So, is that, you agree with that?
Yeah, a lot of, there's so many days where Peter and I might have a list of things that we think we're gonna do that day. And at the end of the day, we can tell you that it was totally not what we expected. We accomplished some other things, but not what we had planned. So
So the core business office staff we're a four-person operation. And it's myself as Director of Finance and Operations, and then we have a new person, Emily, as Finance Clerk. And Becca joined us in May, June, I guess, as Accounts Payable Receivable Clerk. And then Myra has been with us for like 9 years as Finance Clerk, but she moved recently to the position of Human Resources and Payroll Clerk. And that's the operation that was set up and budgeted for, and that's what we've been doing the last few years. It is comparable in size to our neighboring school districts. I think Camden Rockport School System has 5 people, and RSU 40 has 4, like we do. And it's like fielding a team. There are certain positions here that you need someone to play them to make the operation work. And again, with one less school district, or without the GSB towns involved, you still need to be able to have the whole team in place to be able to have the operation running. In addition to the core business office staff, we kind of start spreading things out. Linda Skiff, who is Taj said what the executive assistant does, she actually has several sort of financial responsibilities as well that we'll talk about. And then we have built a tech support team that's working system-wide through a series of stipends. We did not hire the IT director that we budgeted to hire this year, and instead we've distributed that role among everybody in the tech team of the 4 schools that taught service. And that's part of what I manage, and a lot of it comes back to supporting both the business office and the central office in general. I have a whole set of responsibilities, and I'll summarize this as, really the first line is the summary: develop and execute strategic financial planning, and how that gets into everything. And I do that with you year round, and I do that with all the schools. And then there's all kinds of pieces of what we do at the business office that I have to keep an eye on that aren't necessarily the daily operation of things that have to happen continuously around the clock, but are things that happen over periods of weeks and months and the cycle of the year, and that are related to the state reporting of everything we do financially in the audits, and keeping track of all the compliance issues around finances. The finance clerk is one of the 3 business office positions that does a lot of the general bookkeeping and keeping track of where we stand with certain things. The account administration with what we're doing with the bank, and with each of our funds that we have, that we kind of have to we have our title funds, we still have ESSER funds that we're managing, we have different grants, and all of these are different pieces that the finance clerk and I work on, and the finance clerk is continuously doing operations with them every day. The town administrators, we manage the accounts for them, but they actually hold the keys to the cash. And so we're continuously working with them, and the finance clerk is that liaison. Getting the grant reimbursements, as you know, all our title funds, et cetera, all our grants, we have to spend the money first and then ask for it back, but providing all kinds of documentation and copies of invoices. And we have to keep up with that because that's our cash flow. And check reconciliation for the central office bank account, and then financial reporting to administrators. All kinds of types of inquiries. Principals want to see what they're doing here or there, or everything. We've got to generate some reports for them, or getting information out to Kelly and her team, et cetera. The APAR clerk, that's accounts payable, accounts receivable, is basically paying bills continuously and depositing checks and getting them into the right place in the system so they're received. So we do the the accounts payable clerk, we do batches of warrants. We do one for every district in the central office every 2 weeks, so that we're in a continuous cycle of preparing to do the warrant, getting the invoices ready, making sure they're all approved by the school, been sent over by the school admin, and get ready, coded up and ready to get entered into the system. And they get entered into the system. We're on a schedule for that because the towns need to be sign off and show them to their select boards often, or their finance committees, and keeping that system moving is every day there's a deadline for a piece of it. And so we're tracking that. And then we gotta track all the money coming in when you get stacks of checks, because every little grant you get a grant for $20,000, you might get 10 checks to get that money back in different amounts, and you got to kind of make sure it all gets back into the right fund. And we have dozens and dozens of grants, so there's piles of receivables that come in. Getting everybody's reimbursements and tuition, and the vendors all manage a big piece of what this person does. And then the HR payroll clerk has been, in the crosshairs this year with all the work that we've been doing with the Aptifund migration, because there's so many pieces of this. It's not just getting people their paycheck every other week, but looking at, we have 10 different CBAs and wage guidelines to make sure that we're in compliance with to do the payrolls. We have to manage this person manages the 6 personal vacation account balances, make sure they're all accurate with all kinds of inquiries coming in about, how do they use their time, and can they use it half days or whatever, and you got to check the guidelines. So all these come into a payroll person. We have to manage main PERS. It's a complex system, and the Aptifund kind of threw us off on it. It's taken us a while to get back on it, right? So there's a lot of work that goes into that. Health, dental, life insurance, making sure we're all set with all that, and everybody does their annual renewals, and that we change all the different policies with new staff every year, et cetera. The 403B administration, making sure we make our monthly payments to the 403B company, Omni. Payroll deductions are always something that are being managed. We have to send out W-2s every year and do quarterly tax reporting. So there's a lot in there beyond just getting people those paychecks. The whole operation is significant and it has to be absolutely accurate and timely. And so all these different people have very different focuses, and you can't just sort of say, well, let's combine a couple of them. Honestly, it's impossible. And then the executive assistant to the superintendent, she deals with some of the things that are not so much in the financial transactions, but they're still part of the business office. Our property insurance claims, certificates of insurance, if there's a field trip or an athletic event at another school or something, we have to provide a COI. We keep our public records of the warrants that get passed, town meetings, et cetera, and that all has to be well organized and made public. She also processes the work permits for the secondary students that come in and want to get their work permits so they get a job, and there's a flow of that. She keeps track of the secondary school enrollment. She processes the secondary tuition invoices that come in each month from Erskine and Lincoln and others, to make sure that we know who that student is and that they actually, it's going to the right town. And she keeps track of Matt's superintendent agreement. So that is there's a lot of work there on Linda. That is, you take Todd's list and the list of what she's doing for the business office, and you get someone who's busy all the time with a long list of responsibilities. Tech support, these are the key areas that we are doing this year with the tech team. Cybersecurity is obviously something we can't drop the ball on, but none of these things can we'd be down in some way. And that's it. We have 4 schools we serve, and we're doing all these things for everybody. So it occurred to me last night when we were doing the AOS meeting that we've been talking in this presentation about how we're staffing right now, but in terms of next year's budget, there's been a big change since last year, and that is we have already eliminated 2 positions. Let me just get to the slide here. We eliminated 2 positions that we had budgeted in this current year. We no longer have the assistant superintendent, and that cost, was redistributed as we go into next year. eliminating that position with all its benefits and the different conferences and mileage and things and telephones that go with it. Cut 153,245 out of next year's budget. And not having a technology director, cut 137,623. Now we do have stipends in there next year for some tech, for getting some tech done, be less than half of what we budgeted for the position. And the ESEA coordinator that we're outsourcing is like $25,000 compared to 153 of what was being done by the assistant superintendent in those areas. So those are really big efficiencies that from where we planned to be a year ago, where we are now, and where we plan to be next year, has already been big cuts made as we move forward. So, you know, I said this last night, I think this is to summarize for all my colleagues here, why, you know, a big piece of why we put that up there. We're heading into a period where we're about to budget together for next year. And I think the point in making all the boards aware of what we're all doing is we don't think it could be done with any less people in any way. And we know that that's what GSB won't be there. You know, Matt talked about last night that it'll hopefully be a lesser workload for people. And that's absolutely necessary because as Todd said, people are working harder than they ever have. It's not sustainable. I can also tell you that we're experiencing people breaking down as a result of that. And that's becoming a day-to-day, you know, management situation. People are working harder than we should be allowing them to work.
So that's just information for you about what you're getting out of central office. And as I said, we did provide the AOS board with the initial budget. We'll go back, as I think I said it to everyone Tuesday, or Matt, I think you shared it, next Tuesday night. Certainly people, it's open, so you can certainly come and be there for that. It's at central office. So we do have 2 executive sessions.
We do. Did ask a few questions?
Of course you
about
can.
that, but I'm assuming what prompted that presentation is GSB leaving the AOS.
Yes.
And I'm talking about staffing.
Yep.
The 2 positions that we didn't fill, I was against the IT position creation. I voted against it last year. We didn't hire it. Those funds, there's no stipends being paid out this year.
There are this year.
There are
For
this year,
those things that were identified on that last slide. We've had our 4, and Peter can chime in as well, but we've had our 4 tech people. They actually, they're all very skilled, but they also all have expertise, if you will,
Right.
in certain areas. So we've been able to patchwork all the things that an IT director would have had oversight for by distributing it out by those 4 individuals. They've really stepped up and helped us out a lot.
So I guess my
I
question
would
is,
step in
Nope.
with
Go ahead.
one sort of massaging those words. It isn't everything the IT director.
No.
It's the critical path.
Critical,
If we
yeah.
don't do these things, we have to provide cybersecurity. So they're doing a fraction of what the IT director would have done, but it's good enough.
okay, so these positions we created locally in our schools as well. Are they doing more than what their position was? in
Yes, because
Nobleboro?
yeah.
So they're providing what additional
They're
service for the
providing
stipend?
Do you want to talk about it?
So the stipends that we're operating right now, okay, so Chase is the IT coordinator up in Jefferson, and he is our cybersecurity, person. He's looking out at the full range of cybersecurity issues, like whether or not we have the appropriate, how we continue to, because you always need to kind of update your cybersecurity software. You got to look at what kind of servers you're putting it on, et cetera, and you got to do phishing tests with the staff and everything. You got to kind of like always be testing your system and also planning for its maintenance and making sure you're prepared to keep it and that everything's running. So that's, Chase is doing that. He's taking that on full steam.
And most likely Jefferson will have to host. Our stuff is all stored at Great Salt Bay right now.
Right.
So we're gonna have to remove all the infrastructure view of our technology, and that's Jefferson right now is where we're looking at locating that.
So are we paying 4 stipends to each of the
Yeah.
people?
Yes.
That's what Chase does.
What is it?
That's it.
Okay, sorry.
Were you gonna ask me how much that is?
Yes, compared to, we had one person before that we were
65.
given
So the stipends
65,000.
add up to 65,000.
In
And
next
we
year's
had one
budget.
person that we were paying 20,000 before
Yes.
from Great Salt Bay. So what additional duties above, I understand the cybersecurity oversight for the AOS.
So Reed is doing the central office. Reed, who's here, is
Yeah.
doing central office, all our support for all our devices, and computers and software and the printers and the telephone system and everything like that. Reed is the person that's supporting all of us. And that's a $10,000 annual stipend. John Armitage down in South Bristol has taken on, once we saw what we were dealing with Aptifund and realizing that the people who are doing all the work that I described there can't also be responsible for doing the migration. Look, and we have a lot of modules still left to roll out. So John's piloting them in South Bristol, testing them, getting them ready, bringing them to the business office and to the other users, and being an Aptifund kind of technical lead. And that's a $10,000 stipend. And then John Koff has been receiving. It's being billed differently because it was in there a different way. It's being one of your shared lines, but it's the Power School stipend. So he receives about, I think it's a $5,500 stipend for Power School, and this was all. So those stipends right there, that again, the $5,500 Power School stipend is embedded in everybody's shared cost. So that isn't one of the things we're taking out of the central office budget, but the 35 that we're taking out right now, those were sort of. We are in a situation where we don't have anybody helping us with IT right now, and we have some things that are critical. And we worked with the team and negotiated these stipends. And then as we prepared for the budget, we said, we're not going to have an IT director. They were like, whoa, there's still a lot of other things that have to get done around here. And Chase and the team sat and they looked at a list of things and they added a few things that we also need to do. And because we can't go on, right now we have things that nobody's looking at the shared services that we buy. We have a lot of online, we have somewhere, in the shared costs that are not in the AOS budget, but that we manage and are shared, is $212,000 in other costs. A lot of that is shared software that we buy. We need someone who's, is counting licenses, actually asking the administrators and the other tech people, are you using the stuff? Do we need all this stuff? And negotiating renewals, and that's a whole piece that right now we're all winging it on because KJ was doing that.
Right.
We also have to come up with a fiscal agent. This is another issue, but we have to make a lot of changes.
That's on the agenda for Tuesday night.
Yeah, Great Salt Bay was fronting the money for all this, and then all the schools were paying them back. Somebody has to take that on. I don't know what town wants to take that on. We'll talk about that at the AOS meeting, but it gets into the budget management of all the shared technology and hosting. And then there's just the list that we're giving to the AOS includes a couple
Not
other
for our
areas.
side of things, I don't believe so.
Teams that we need leadership on this. We can't be doing this in the school while we're helping the kids. And so that resulted in their request for
No.
$65,000 worth of
It's in there.
stipends, and that's the budget for that. For the
Unless they
AOS.
took it out last minute.
I'll look.
How were the stipends, because I know before it was based on hours that KJ was doing to support the AOS. Is this all still based on an hourly formula? Or how are they determined? This could be an AOS question too that I'm at the
It's
wrong
a-
meeting for.
There is we basically looked at a number of different factors. I said, when I did this with the different tech team people, Glenn Kelly, thank you. We looked at what their current contracts were, how much time did they have in addition to what they were already contracted for, what were their rates, and if we have a certain set of, I worked on with Chase was a very specific kind of 4-phase project plan where he would investigate everything we had, come back with a report, on how safe and secure we were, come up with a maintenance plan for everything we had, come up with a plan for what we need to stay, what we should be budgeting for next year, and do training and tests with the staff. So we broke that up and we said, how much is each of these section times going to cost? How many days? And then we looked at what his rate was, and we came up with this is a fair compensation for this project for the year. And then we also, I had KJ talk to Reed about how much it takes to support the central office devices and the phone system, et cetera. And they looked at, real time that KJ had put into that. And we, again, did the same thing with Reed. And we also, Reed is available 2 days a week.
Fiscal agent of adult education.
Okay, that's not.
So we looked at, okay, in summer, you're only there, you only have so much time. and then the
Software and
rest of the
stuff
year you
that's
got some
paid
time
out
to
for that,
fill.
we have to
So we
pay for
kind of
that.
negotiated all that, but we, I did it like I would do it with any contractor or vendor.
So, oh, sorry, you got,
Say another question. The only other thing is, if we approved that, was it already written into the interlocal agreement for the shared services, the IT director? And is that being
The-
removed?
Yeah, so the IT, the words IT director do not appear in the interlocal agreement. What the interlocal agreement says is that, the positions in the AOS include, but are not limited to, the following. And essentially, the AOS board can have positions as it so fits, and it so chooses. So everything was done appropriately. But it was, for all different kinds of reasons, we're gonna go a different path. It's a hard position to fill, it's an expensive position to fill. The board was not unanimous in making that decision. And we have some talented people who are rising to the, getting up to bat and saying they want to engage. So I want to take advantage of the people who are here that are already working well together and that are doing the job now. And I'd rather invest further in them. There's a lot of transition planning and succession management in this. We got a couple of these guys who have been doing like the power school administration for a long time, but we can't expect that to go on forever. And we need to look at some of the younger members of the crew and say, do you think you can take this on? And if not, we have to make plans for that. So that I'd rather have that kind of succession management than the threat of hiring somebody and they don't last, and then you got to start all over again. So, but it's something that I would love. We started talking about it last night. Something that Todd and I have talked about, but what we're doing right here, right now, anybody who has any tech background, I'm all ears to kind of like talking about how we can manage it, how we can make it successful, and making sure that the schools are secure. The cybersecurity bit was when I realized we didn't have that position filled and we were, in June, I was immediately kind of on the phone with Chase saying, we need you to kind of be on top of this because we can't go 30 seconds without knowing somebody's up to help.
So we did post it and wasn't filled, is that what?
Yeah, we posted it for all kinds of, reasons. We weren't allowed to post it as early as I would have liked, and then we were kind of late in the season. I don't think we posted it till May, and those positions usually get hired in April. So we potentially missed a wave, but I also understand that there just aren't that many people out there that were hunting. And it's a high demand field to begin with.
Right.
And so we did keep it posted into, I think even into October, and we just weren't getting anything. And this became, so again, part of what, as I said, there's a lot of reasons why I want to go this route, but one of them is we have people here now who can do what we need to do, and I don't want to just be dependent on seeing if we can find someone. And the tech team themselves, honestly, I'm not coming to you saying, I think we need these services. The tech team is saying, we absolutely need these services. You have to provide them for us because we can't do this in our school buildings without somebody without organizing, at least in this way, to provide the centralized things we all need to have. And they self-identified what they wanted to be in there and talked among themselves. And I facilitated that conversation, but I didn't try to get a certain outcome out of it or anything.
Thank you.
You good, Mike?
I am.
You know what? I have one question. So we pay them the stipends. When are they doing this work?
I showed you yesterday the charts, and some of it's done all year round, some of it's done only during the school
Actually,
year.
I'm not trying to
What are
interrupt you, but is it during the work day that they're working?
No, they make extra time. That's something that, and we met with their principals. I met with Janet and Chase a couple of times, in which we reviewed Chase's hours, his responsibilities, and even Chase was the one who first said, I won't do this unless you meet with Janet and make sure it's clear. And that became our sort of standard for, okay, you have to make sure that this is working in your building before you take it on with us, because we don't want to be, kind of getting in the way you're doing your work. The kind of work that this is not, like we made a certain agreement with Reed on response time for the central office, which is kind of lengthy. It's okay for him to kind of say, I can't get there this week, I'll come next week. And it's like, we kind of like deal with that. And we have response times that we negotiated with him on different kinds of problems. Like if something's gone wrong without the funding, we can't make payroll. Yeah, he is gonna put down what he's doing, come over and help us get that going. But if it's like the printer driver isn't working with one person's thing, it might be a week or 10 days, so we looked at all that. But they're not coming out of their hours in the building to do other things. They're doing it at their own time.
Okay.
And then they also recognize that they're gonna have a little bit busier summer than they otherwise would have.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we appreciate them.
We need the motion to go into.
We do.
Looking to get a motion to go into executive session.
We'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
To read them off?
You can, you don't have to.
Okay.
You
Second
should
it.
probably, but
Jen?
for the recording, but it's in the minutes. It's in the minutes.
Sorry, did I cut you off again?
No, he was asking if he should read the statute, but it's in the minutes.
Any discussion?
Who was the second? I'm sorry, I missed the second.
Jen. All in favor?
Night, everyone.
Night.
Thank you.
Hold on, I haven't shut the recording off.
Next time to catch up all in one night. I know. Right.
No action taken.
So no action was taken, so without objection. End the meeting at
9:16.
9:16.
Good job, guys.
Click, click.
Really the whole